How's it going, Dowell?
Good.
Sorry to be so vague about this, but what were you guys trying to run against Ole Miss, and why didn't it work?
What were we trying to is very vague. Um, we didn't execute the way we need to execute. We didn't coach the way we need to coach. There was some good, and I don't know if you find good in losing, but you have to look at all aspects of it. You know, we crossed the 50-yard line 7 times. We didn't finish in the red area the way we needed to. It was definitely a game where we were going to try to shrink the game a little bit and go for it on some fourth downs. And so you start looking at what didn't work. I think we were 1 of 5 on third down runs that didn't, we were trying to put it more in fourth and manageable and go for it. And we weren't explosive enough in the passing game. I think we had 2 explosive passes. It's a hard formula to win, no matter how efficient you are in the run game. And we had 2 turnovers. So when you're not explosive in the passing game and you turn the ball over and you don't finish drives, I think we had 5 drives of over 8 plays or more, and it wasn't a move the ball thing. It was a finish a drive thing. It was a finish execution. It was, and to their credit, they played really soft zone, didn't pressure very much, and said, hey, we're going to give up yards and let them do this and that, but we'll see if they could put 10 and 12 and 13 play drives together and score touchdowns. And I'm sure it was because of, the option game and all those other things. They want to make sure they had eyes on the quarterback, and, that was their plan, and they executed better than we did.
Is that what was most frustrating when you look back on it, is the lack of explosives and being able to finish? Is that
when the game starts going that way, you start feeling like you're playing small ball. And, you're not winning, creating separation down the field, and the ball gets checked down, and you want, at some point, it's just, you go back and look at the NFL, like, explosive plays and turnovers win ball games. And when you're not creating those explosive plays, and you're moving the ball, and you're averaging 4 yards a carry in the run game on called run. We had 31 called runs, and the average 4.1 a carry. We put up some yards that way in the running game, but you got to create explosives. And when you don't, you got to break tackles. You got to make people miss. You got to hit your scheme plays. And when you don't, you're never in control of the game.
You and everyone else talked a lot about protection and some of the sacks allowed. Another 6 Saturday. Is it possible to really change things week to week that much, or is it just adding a wrinkle here or there to try to make things better?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a very fair question. It's everyone, and too, it's not just the offensive line. It's the quarterback. Make sure that we're throwing the ball on time. It's wide receivers creating separation. It's tight ends with being good in chip help, and it's all of us. It's us coaching, making sure that we're giving all the looks we need to give, and make sure that we're getting better at that stuff. It was disappointing when you get there and you look at 6 sacks. And this morning I was looking and talking to some NFL buddies, and you go back and you look at ESPN's protection composition. Well, the bottom 4 teams in that protection composition are 1 and 4, and it's a trench. The NFL is a trench game. The SEC is a trench game. You got to win on the offensive line, and you got to win on the defensive line. And some of the time, when it comes to sacks, it involves everybody. So it's being conscious to get the ball out quick. It's creating separation. It's everybody, and we're working diligently to improve that, because it's definitely an area we need to improve.
Correct me if I'm just totally wrong on this, but it seems like when we watch the game, Lenoris is really good about going through his progressions, but when there's so many sacks, how much of that is on you to tweak the scheme a little bit so he doesn't have so many progressions, and then how much of that is on him to know in his head what the clock is and just know when to run?
Yeah. Also, yes on all of it. Yes. Also, that put in the degree of we got to create separation wide receiver as well to win. Everything's easy when number 1 is open. When you got to get to number 2, that's when pass protection's at a premium. It's where route separation, it's a premium. It's the timing of a drop is at a premium. So that's what I'm saying. It's not just, I always, if y'all want to blame anyone, you always start with me. It's easy. That's my job, is to help these guys be successful. And we didn't do that enough in this last game. So then you start looking at, do we stack bunch more? Do we create some access into some free releases for our wide receivers? What do we do to help those guys get open versus press coverage more? Or, those things. So when you start getting to 2 and 3 and 4 in the progression, that's really good for a quarterback. I think that's what separates the really good ones. That's why Spencer Rattler played the way he did, because he can get to 3 and 4 in a progression. And, so you need your pass protection to hold up like that as well. So obviously scheming to get number one open is always a goal, because then it's clean, it's smooth. It's the second, third, and 5 of the game. Like, we got to make sure we run a hitch. We got to get our depth. It's 3rd and 5. We got to throw a 6-yard hitch route and have a first down because we have off access. And instead we're 4th and 1. And so those things come up and happen. It's details of route depths and protections and all those things that go into it. It's not just, if it was one thing, it'd be fixed. It's a multitude of things. And sometimes, like, you have 3rd down conversions and we have 3 OPIs, and it's all of a sudden, and 2 of them are the same exact, 2 different people, but it's the same exact thing. And it's a bunch of young guys out there. And we tell our guys all the time, keep making new mistakes. We can't have repeat mistakes. So it's all that stuff into one. It's not just, if it was as simple as, hey, this is what it is, we could fix it, we're going to slide protect more, we're going to create more separation for the wide receivers because we're going to stack and get them free access so they're not getting pressed, and that would be simple. But there's a lot of there's a million little things that go into making this thing right.
With Robbie getting the 1 snap and the fumble, what do you say to him to kind of pick his spirits back up and keep him, in a good spot? I would imagine he probably doesn't take much since he's obviously been through a lot over the course of his career. But what's sort of your message?
Yeah, and it was because there's another situation. We're past the 50-yard line. We're on their side. It's the second series of the game. We're on the 40-yard line, and we put the ball on the ground. And he's a guy that's really explosive and is probably as good as anyone on our team with the ball in his hands. So just go back to practice and make sure that we fix the issue that happened during the game between he and Rocket on the exchange. And he's still, he's a guy that we trust and believe in. At that point in the game, the turnover, it bothered me because we had too many turnovers at quarterback right now. And it bothered me, and there was still a thought process to get him in later and some things. But at that point right there, I knew how the game was going to go, and I knew that we can't put the ball on the ground. We got to eliminate the sacks, the penalties, the turnovers to give yourself a chance to play a really good opponent and have a chance to win the game in the 4th quarter. And so for him, it's get back to work, get back to practice. He's been through a lot, like you mentioned, and he'll be fine. And he's dealt with adversity and prosperity.
Dell, you mentioned the receivers not getting some separation. How much did that play into the lack of deep shots during the game, or were there other issues preventing those two?
No, it's a combination of multiple things. There were deep shots called, but they're playing softer zone because they're worried about triple options and those things. They don't want to play as much 11 dog that they played against other teams because they don't want to turn their back to the quarterback and have these mobile quarterbacks running. It's also us. We talked about a big part of this thing too is pass protection. Well, all of a sudden, now you want to take deeper shots, you got to go down the field further, so you're holding the ball longer. And we wanted to get the ball out of Lenoir's hands on some of this stuff and create some more catch and carry stuff because we are looking for solutions and to cut down that number. So it's not just them. I'm telling you, when I'm being, this isn't coach talk. I'm trying to be as honest as I can and transparent as I can about it. It's all of us, starting with me to the offensive line, the quarterback, the wide receivers, the running backs, wide receiver, or tight ends. We're all taking part of it, and I think that's where some of the good is coming is because if you're looking for good, and you got to work really hard right now after that last game to look for good, but you do as a coach, you have to players, and you have to really dive into this thing and say, okay, truth overcomes all. Let's figure it out. But to put together 5 8+ drives and put together a 10, a 13, there is good. You're moving the ball. You got to find a way to create explosives, and you got to find a way to eliminate the things that lose football games and stop drives. Well, that's drop balls, it's penalties and sacks. So all of that goes into the deep shots. Obviously, and to the point I made before, it's gonna be really hard to create explosive plays, and be the offense you want to be, and so that is a big emphasis as well for us this week.
Seemed like coming into the season, the wide receiver room was going to kind of evolve a little bit as the season went along, through 5 games in a bye week. Do you feel like y'all have a pretty good grasp of what the wide receiver room is, the strength and weaknesses of that bunch? And, you've mentioned getting separation. What's the next step for that group in general in terms of growth?
Yeah, it is continue to get better. When we first started this thing, I knew we were an offense that needed to get better every week. I thought we had done that up until last week. I think last week was the first time we took a step backwards in improving each week. So, yes, we are learning these guys better than what we, but obviously when we started. It's about improving every day. It's about staying healthy. It's about making a weakness a strength. It's about understanding not just the route on what to do, but how to do it, and using the separation techniques that versus man coverage and versus bumps and versus different zones that we're to find and sit into. There's a lot that goes into that position. I don't think that we haven't really separated ourselves. I give a lot of praise to Mazio for being a young player, true freshman, to come in and do what he's done. We had the 4th and 3. We had a choice route called, and he's such a competitive kid. He comes right off the bat, and I was like, I've never seen that. And they bracketed him and Josh Simon because those probably our 2 leading receivers. And the message to him is, hey, you got to catalog everything. Every time you do something, it is the first time you've seen a different coverage. Like, you got to catalog that, and you can't make the same mistake twice. So for him, he's a smart kid, and he's going to get better from it. So, and I see growth in that. I see growth in him. And he's got the right mindset to understand, like, don't get frustrated. Like, file that thing away and keep playing ball. It is a process. Now, we are trapped by the bottom line in this sport of winning and losing and production, and he understands that, but it also helps him stay positive because he is doing a lot of good things on the field, and he is growing. He sees himself leading the team in reception. So it's easy to coach him that way because he sees growth, and he sees himself on tape getting better, and there's production. So it's that way with every different kid, and every different kid is handled a different way, and there's things that come up, and that our message to them is continue to make new mistakes, eliminate mistakes as fast as possible, especially the ones that get you beat, like the drops and misalignments and from a wide receiver room and it hurt the offense, and continue to grow.
Going off of everything kind of you just said, the offense, with Lenoris being hurt at one point, Rocket, it's just been different guys out there. Yeah. And then you kind of alluded to taking a step back a little bit this week. What's just the mental message in that? Because obviously you talked about execution and the little things and explosive offense, but I imagine a lot of that might be kind of mental more than physical to some degree. Yeah,
that's a really good question. We have time for 2 questions. He said that we could talk about that for 30 minutes because it is a great question because there is a lot on a young kid, and we have had a lot of moving parts with the injuries and youth and trying to figure out where to put people and do those things, and Lenoris being banged up, and then Rocky gets banged up, but it's also an opportunity for other people to step up and to help fulfill a role in a game. And it's also the message in a world we're in right now is with social media and hanger-oners and all this stuff, all the noise that's in these kids' head is to, like, when you walk in the door every day, you have to focus on the process of getting better. And you have to put all that other stuff, all the outside noise to the side and focus on the tape. Because our tape, when we hit play on that with that remote over there, that's our resume as football players and football coaches. And right now ours isn't good enough, and there are some things that we can praise the good and coach the bad really hard. We have good kids, so they're able to take coaching, and there is good. It's not like, wow, oh my gosh, like, we got no chance. Like, we've proven that we can do some really good things offensively. We're just not doing it consistently enough, and it's the process of growth and cataloging reps. And when there is someone goes down, then the next person has to be ready to step up. And if you're not in, it's also a message to those other guys like, hey, that's how fast you go in. You're 1 play away, you're 2 play away, and you have to have the right mindset, because if you're not getting mental reps, if you're not paying attention, if you're not learning from someone else's rep, positive or negative, then you're hurting the team. So that's really when you talk about the messaging is do everything you can to improve your value, which will improve the value of the team.
I imagine after a week like that, you almost feel like you're playing whack-a-mole, like trying to get one problem done and another one pops up. Like,
what game?
Whack-a-mole?
Whack-a-mole? Is that the little?
Yeah. You hit one problem, another one pops up.
The fair's in town too, so that, yeah.
I didn't even think about that. Look at that, tying it together. How do you prioritize what needs to get fixed? Because I imagine it's pretty impossible to just fix everything with a snap.
Yeah, it's a great question, and that's what gives us gray hair as coaches, and why we move a lot. But it's the things before you can win, you have to stop the things that lose football games, and it's the sacks, it's the turnovers, it's the penalties, and that's what you have to attack. We have the right type kids that play hard. Is experience what we want to be? Heck no, we're not. But the only way to get experience is to play. But we have to attack every day at practice the things that get you beat first. And that's where we're going to show improvement. And that's where we have to create consistency is those things. Because then, you know what, if that happens, the 8-play drive, the 10-play drive ends in points versus, going 10 plays, getting across the 50, and you come out with no points 7 times. Like, that's unacceptable. But how do we fix it? Well, that's why you got to work really hard at figuring out what wins game and what loses games. And sometimes it takes young people some time to figure that stuff out, and they get frustrated. But the consistency that you're trying to build, the only way to do it is through practice and making sure that we're all on the same page with the same message of how we're going to win football games. And there are certain ways when you do have a good defense like we do, and we do play pretty good special teams around here, like understanding also what wins complimentary football, which we did against Kentucky. We didn't turn it over. The ball bounced our way a couple times. We finished in the red area. We were really close to playing that way against LSU. You take away 2 turnovers and we're playing winning football, and we're giving ourselves a chance at the end of the game to win the situation, the 2 minute to go to overtime if we knock down that field goal. Like, there's a lot of good that comes, and then you take this next step and you take a step backwards. So now it's how do you respond? Like, we lost a home game where we didn't play well enough, and the tape tells us what we need to work on, but it's the messaging of we have to clean up the things that lose games. Appreciate you guys.